Okay, thank you, Haley. How am I doing with the screen sharing? Can you see and hear everything okay?
We got you, Chad.
Excellent. All right, everyone. It has been a phenomenal day of talks and breakouts. I want to start by giving many thanks. So thank you to our speakers. We are honored to have had each and every one of you with us. Thanks to you, the attendees, for coming and making our first Data for Justice conference a big success. And I do not have enough words, but I will try to properly thank Haley Taylor, Isabel Fields, Emily Byers, and all of our QSide development fellows for their tireless and I will say brilliant work making this whole event happen. Thank you. In the few remaining moments that we all have together here, I want to tell you just a little bit more about QSide. So in my opening remarks at the start of the day, I focused on the justice part of Data for Justice, and I gave you a taste of the different social justice issues that we work on at QSide. Now, civil rights leader and educator and investigative journalist Ida B. Wells said that the way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth upon them. Thankfully, there are many forms of the light of truth, but for QSide, for us at QSide, data science and mathematics and computation are really powerful ones. And so I'd now like to focus on the data part of Data for Justice, and in particular, just say a few things about QSide's unique capabilities in data science and applied mathematical modeling. And I'm going to do this by revisiting, just briefly, a few of the projects that I mentioned this morning. So when we got curious about diversity of artists in major art museums, art scholars on our team chose 19 museums as foci for our study. Those 19 museums had 187,000 artists collectively listed on their websites. We wanted to infer demographic percentages within each museum, that is, the proportion of artists in each museum catalog perceived to have particular genders, ethnicities, national origins, and birth years. We figured out how to do it on a large scale and in a reliable way. People aware of our study gave us a lot of explanations, or as I prefer to call them, excuses, for just how white and male-dominated the museum collections turned out to be. So, of course, a museum with a lot of 19th century European art will be dominated by white men, they'd say. And you heard a lot of great things earlier from Diana Greenwald on this topic. So I'm not going to assess or to address who is making art historically. But what I can do is show you some convincing evidence that museums that have similar geographic and temporal foci in their collections can display drastically different levels of artist diversity. And this suggests that maybe even without changing the primary foci of collection, a museum can find ways to diversify its collection. And that's an insight that we gleaned through our statistical analyses. Earlier today, you heard about sentencing disparities. And so to recap, for quite some time, there has been empirical evidence that people of color tend to receive much harsher criminal sentences than white counterparts who commit similar crimes. While this phenomenon has been recognized for a long time, the government's own data policies have precluded us from understanding, like, specifically which judges might be creating racial inequity through their sentencing. And in fact, the governing body of the federal judiciary is called the Judicial Conference of the United States, and they have an explicit policy. So this is not like by accident. It is their explicit policy not to release data sets that identify judges. In his talk from this morning, Christian Smith told you about QSide's JustFair project. JustFair is the first large-scale publicly available database that provides federal sentencing records with the name of the sentencing judge identified. This is critical if we want to understand specific sources of racial inequity, but how did we at QSide get this previously unavailable data? Well, there's a simple answer. No, just kidding. The answer is not simple at all. It required us not only to invoke a lot of knowledge about the judicial system, but to figure out how to efficiently sift through millions of records, connect information from disparate sources, and validate our results. Earlier, I mentioned QSide's work studying student body diversity on college and university campuses, keeping in mind that affirmative action is illegal in some states and legally fraught in others. And so for a university wishing to diversify its campus, but who are unable to do so through affirmative action, a common approach is to make a policy change, implement it for several years, and then retrospectively analyze the data to try to determine the effect of the policy. QSide's complementary approach is to create a forecasting model that lets us project the impact that certain types of interventions might have. We're able to do this because of our expertise, not just with data science, but with mathematical modeling of dynamical systems as frameworks for predicting change. This morning, I told you about how in my town there was a picture of Hitler up in the local police station, and that in response to this discovery, as well as to other allegations of misconduct, there were community members demanding public accountability and change. I also told you that the response of the police was to illegally search the data of citizens who had publicly critiqued them. What we want to do at QSide is study our local policing activity, and perhaps even more importantly, create a template that small municipalities all over the country could follow if they want to do the same. So here's an example of a police log entry that I obtained through public records requests. But what's the challenge? Well, my request produced thousands and thousands of pieces of paper, which the police helpfully delivered to my home in a stack of bankers' boxes outside my door. So Massachusetts public records laws prescribe that records must be provided in electronic format if they're available that way. But it turns out that in my local police department, their computer record system is so ancient that it literally cannot electronically export the information. And so what we got was stacks of paper. And fortunately, we know how to create a pipeline that scans the records, converts them into text, cleans it all, parses them into structured and geocoded data that will eventually be posted online so that the public can study it through a friendly interface. And as I said, we're going to write an instruction manual to teach other towns how to do this as well. Now, to wrap up, here's a quotation for you. It's going to be impossible to get usable data. The source of this quotation is, as I like to say, anyone who wants to rile me up. Like, to me, these are fighting words. So at QSide, we have never met a data challenge that we don't embrace. And we like to think that we have special expertise with data that is in principle public data, but that is in practice difficult or impossible to access, organize, and study. More generally, and beyond all sorts of the sort of standard statistical analyses that we can do, a few of our special strengths include web scraping, data mining and merging, large-scale inferences of demographic data, crowdsourcing, messy data, high-dimensional data, data visualization and storytelling, data sharing, and transparency. Those are our unique strengths at QSide, but we cannot and we must not live in a vacuum where we are just quants. So we do what we do by collaborating across disciplinary boundaries and by taking the time and effort to respect and to leverage expertise from the areas that we work in. So we talk with criminal justice people and collaborate. We talk with art scholars and collaborate. We talk with education experts and collaborate, and healthcare providers and policymakers and activists. And one of the highest compliments we ever got, I think, was from a legal scholar who told us, I usually can't understand anything in conversations with numbers people, but when we talk, I understand it. So let me close by again inviting you to become involved in QSide. You can join our affiliate program. You can join our consortium. You can sponsor us. You can make critical donations so that we can continue to survive and thrive. You can attend and participate in our programs and much more. I welcome the chance to hear from you, so please just drop me a line if you want to discuss ways to partner. Thank you again for coming, and I wish you all well.